Welcome to the Mindset Mentor. Each episode is a journey into the minds of successful business leaders and trailblazers, offering you a treasure trove of mentorship and wisdom, where every story inspires action and every conversation ignites change. Now, here is your navigator through the intricate world of business acumen and entrepreneurial spirit, Victor Gonzalez.
Welcome to the Mindset Mentor. And today we have a special guest. We have Adam McChesney. He is the owner of Builders of Authority, which is an awesome private group for building your brand and local authority. He's also a Ben Newman certified coach, the host of the Entrepreneur podcast, and like I said, the owner of Builders of Authority. Adam, thank you so much for hopping on today.
Victor, thanks for having me, man. Pleasure to be here. And I'm excited to pour it into those that are listening. I know many people are going to get some value out of us having an awesome conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, man. And I appreciate it again. Yeah, man, for those who don't know you, I know I just gave kind of a brief overview of some of the things that you're doing right now. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a background on kind of you and your experience for the viewers and listeners who may not know who you are?
Absolutely. So I am here in St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised here, lived here pretty much my entire life outside of college. I live here with my wife, Delaney, our dog, Georgie, and our 9-month-old Murphy. Before I got into my entrepreneurial journey, I spent 5 years in medical device sales. So I worked for a small company here in St. Louis for about 1.5 years. And then for 3.5 years, I worked at a company called ResMed. So if anyone is familiar with CPAP equipment, the devices, the masks, those types of things, that's what I sold here in the state of Missouri. Managed about a $15 million a year territory when I started there, and then grew it to about 25 million over 3.5 years. And it's kind of what I always thought I wanted to do. I played college soccer, and some of the guys that were ahead of me went on to go do medical sales, and they were making a lot of money, driving really nice cars and traveling the world. So I kind of thought that that's what I wanted to do as well. I got promoted really early on at ResMed. And so at the age of 27, I made $200,000 in my first full year in that role. And I grew up not necessarily knowing like what being rich was. And it's not that when I made that money, I felt rich or that I bought a bunch of stuff, but I kind of thought $100,000 was like making it, if you will, right? I just didn't have a lot of information or education from that standpoint. And so when I got the money, when I started making the money, I realized that I had been chasing literally just that. And so I was sitting in a hotel room in 2018 in Kansas City, Missouri, after traveling a bunch. It was right before Thanksgiving. And I was like, you know what? I really want to do something else. I want to at least get started with a side hustle. So I was looking into real estate investments. I typed in literally in that hotel room, how to make money online, and came up with a bunch of different ads and all of this stuff. And I ended up getting back on Facebook, and I got retargeted by an ad that had this massive, shiny apartment complex. And it was like, wouldn't you like to own this without actually having to own this building, worrying about all of those tenants, the repairs, etc.? You would own digital real estate. And I was like, I'm sold. So I paid $7,000 for that course, and it taught me digital marketing. So building websites, ranking websites, and ranking Google business profiles. So from 2018 to 2020, before I left and went full time, I built 200 websites. So I built 200 websites with my own money, my own resources, my own time, and had a lot of really good results, case studies, etc. Some of those 200 websites became businesses that I now own today, just because we were generating so many leads with them. But I was actually acting as like a digital landlord. So I was ranking websites, Google business profiles, leads would come in. They would come into me, and I would, forward them on to a local service-based business and either charge them per lead, per sale, rental fee, whatever you want to call it. And so I went full-time in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic with everything that was going on. It kind of just felt like a right time to be able to do that. And I completely flipped my business model about a month in. I went from the rank and rent or digital real estate model to doing it for local businesses. Like they wanted a new website, they wanted SEO, they wanted Google business profile stuff. I then added on paid advertising, and I grew that really quickly because I had the skill set that most agency owners didn't have, which was building 200 sites, throwing crap against the wall, figuring out what worked and what didn't. And I coupled that with personal branding. So I really stuck out from other marketing agencies that were offering the same things to my ideal clients. And so we grew from 0 to 7 figures in 15 months. We then hit about $200,000 a month in recurring revenue in December of 2022. And so some different things that happened along the way is for the first 9 months, I was doing it on my own. And we capped out about 30,000 a month in revenue because we just couldn't take on more clients. We couldn't service or take on a customer service standpoint of any more clients. And I was essentially doing all of the work. So that's where I found Height Digital. So Height is a digital marketing agency that then turned into a franchise. And I was one of 26 franchises for a while. I did that for 2 years up until June of 2023. Then I became a partner at all of Height. And technically still a shareholder, but I've removed myself from the day-to-day back in March of this past year, went full all in Builders of Authority. So as quick as I could possibly give everybody everything that was going on, that's my story.
That's awesome, man. And one of the things I like about you too, are you born and raised in the Lou? Like, are you born and raised
yes.
in St. Louis?
Yes.
Okay. So like, all right. So I'm gonna kind of shift this conversation a little bit. I went to college in St. Louis, and I feel like there's like a super false narrative around St. Louis. Like everyone just focused on East St. Louis, which is just such a small portion of what St. Louis is.
Yeah.
Dude, I've lived in some of the best parts. I've lived in like Creve Coeur. I've also lived in Delmar's Loop. So I've seen both sides.
Yeah.
And the city's like so near and dear to me. And one thing I've noticed is like a lot of people who move to St. Louis, like typically never leave. And there's just this aura about St. Louis. I love St. Louis. I love the personalities out there. There's such a different, it's I don't even know how to express it. Like there's just something about St. Louis and the people of St. Louis that's so original, so authentic. How would you say like St. Louis has kind of shaped your personality into who you are today? Because I mean, you're a content machine, and a lot of people aren't really, they're afraid to get in front of the camera. They have that social anxiety, and come from a place like St. Louis where it's like almost everyone that you come across is like very outgoing. From what I've noticed in my time in St. Louis, and everyone that I know from St. Louis, everyone's like so open and outgoing. How would you say the city has kind of like shifted and crafted your personality to make you feel comfortable being on stages, being in front of cameras, and posting all the amount of content that you post?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been on hundreds of podcasts and I've never been asked that question. So I'm actually really glad you did that. So if you've been in St. Louis, obviously you kind of know there is a little bit of like a cliquey stigma to it of like, where did you go to high school? You know, what area did you grow up in? In growing up, right? Like when you're in college, like people kind of take that a little bit serious in certain degrees, or at least after you graduate college, like, oh my gosh, you're from this area. But once you really pass that stage and you're really in like the professional world, if you call it, I think what shapes a lot of St. Louisans and what shapes people that live here is that, well, the reason why we asked all of those questions is you're only a couple people removed from pretty much anyone that you want to know in St. Louis. And so I think it taught me the power of building relationships and networking, as well as when you take care of people, your people, especially in a very Midwestern type environment where people get together for sporting events. Like we lost our football team, St. Louis Rams, but then our XFL, like semi-pro team, if you will, sells out more than some NFL stadiums does. We show up, right? And so I think it taught me resilience. It taught me the ability that you can pretty much do whatever you want as long as you set your mind to it and do the work. And some of the things that I've just came across is like how actually small the world really is, and your reputation matters throughout all this stuff. So you mentioned that I was Ben Newman coach certified. He lives like 15 minutes away from me. I had him on my podcast earlier this year because we knew some of the same people. I had been supporting him for 3 years. Funny enough, I didn't even know who Andy Frisella was up until I ended up becoming an entrepreneur back in 2020. Andy and Sal went to my high school. And so I went back to an alumni event a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month or two ago, and Sal literally spoke at the event. And so now that I'm an entrepreneur, I kind of realized, I think a little bit more than I did maybe working in corporate America, how St. Louis has shaped and formed me into who I am. And again, there is something unique about being here. There's something unique about the people. There's something unique about the cohesiveness and the environment. But I think all of those things I mentioned kind of helped me do what I've done. And St. Louis is a big part of that, obviously.
Yeah, man. I love St. Louis, and it's like it is so different, man. I've been everywhere from Chicago. I was born and raised in New York. Like I said, I went to college in St. Louis. So like some of my most fun years were like in St. Louis. So it's very near and dear to me. But
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Missouri Baptist.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I went to Columbia College, so we played Missouri Baptist all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Missouri Baptist was great, man. I played baseball over there, full scholarship, and that's what brought me into St. Louis. But I was like, I loved my time there. And I think one of the things you said was like the power of the networking and the cohesiveness of the city. Man, it's like you don't see that anywhere else. Like I'm from New York City, which is obviously a lot larger. You don't see that kind of camaraderie, and like the fact that the city is very small in essence. Like everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other, I feel like, in St. Louis. Especially when you get into like the Albanians. Oh my God. The Albanians, they roll in packs and they're like the nicest people ever. But okay, cool. So you've done that now. To pull back a little bit. So you started with 200 plus websites that you kind of did on your own. That's kind of led you into that digital marketing space and marketing. And then you went into Height as I believe you were a franchise owner, you said?
Yes, franchisee.
Okay. And what were some of the things that you would say you learned the most during your experience as a franchise owner? Because I come from the insurance space and I owned a franchise. And I'm curious to see on the marketing side, if there's any similarities there on that franchise model. Because I know a lot of people who also own franchises. So curious to hear your opinion on that.
So very interesting. Like I knew what franchising was, obviously, but I had no, like, if you would have told me before that I would own a franchise, it'd be like, I don't even know what I would buy. Right. And so Height was a white label fulfillment agency. So for most people that aren't listening or that are listening that don't understand digital marketing, is very few marketing agencies, even some of the largest agencies out there, actually do the work themselves. There's another company behind the scenes or virtual assistants or wherever that are actually doing some of the things externally, then having their brand and all that stuff slapped onto it to then produce it to the client. So that's what Height was doing for a couple of hundred marketing agencies. And then they kind of decided, hey, let's disrupt the digital marketing space by offering franchising to agency owners. And so they were the only ones and still are the only ones, to my knowledge, that have done that. And so basically for me is I had this unique skill set, I guess you could say, is most agency owners, the best agency owners that I know, are usually really, really good at the actual technician of doing the stuff, but they can never grow. Right. So they're not good at sales. They're not good at networking, and they're not good at prospecting, but they're really freaking good at like the deliverable aspect. And so for me, I was kind of this unique blend where I came from medical sales, and this is kind of how personal branding ties into all of this stuff. I came from medical sales. My first job in medical sales, I had to go knock doors in an 18-state territory, basically flying around the country, mostly on the East Coast, 75% of the year. And so I really cut my teeth there. I loved sales, and I obviously still do it to this day, but like it gave me so much experience that I would never have been able to got in a typical larger company or really any other like job inside a company. So that was awesome. I went to ResMed. ResMed's like the leader in the market, the brand. Everybody knew who ResMed was. I just really needed to go build relationships, network, and upsell and do some stuff there. And then I went into digital marketing where I'm like, okay, if I can just figure out what some of the biggest pain points are for my ideal clients, which were usually contractors, I can take this thing to the next level because I have this skill set that most agency owners don't have. Most agency owners don't have referrals, or they only get their new business from like referrals or past customers and things like that. They're not outgoing and doing a lot of the stuff I had experience in. But I also knew how to build websites, and I also knew how to do SEO. So I was kind of this, unicorn, if you will, at the time of being able to go and grow as fast as I did. I just didn't have the capacity to continue to grow. So I knew another franchise owner. We actually met in that group of that course I bought in 2018. And he was a franchise owner at the time at Height in Austin, Texas. And he was like, hey man, like, I know your skill set. I know what you're struggling with. I'm a franchise owner. Like, you should check it out. So I ended up joining them in April-ish of 2021, hired my first account manager to take off some of the client like management and account management load. And then it came with the full, back end processes and systems, and then the actual fulfillment. So I just went out and sold. Like, that's what I did. I just put my sales hat on. And we went from 30,000 a month in recurring revenue in April 21 to 100,000 in October of 21. So in 6 months, we grew by 70,000 recurring revenue because I just got to go focus specifically on that. So I learned a lot of lessons about just like business in general, but specifically franchising, both on the franchisor side, because I became a partner of everything, as well as the franchisee side, and how there's ups and downs and everything else that's in between. But processes and systems in business are literally everything. Like, I could have done what I did at Height on my own, but it would have taken me way longer because I wasn't great at the processes and systems. I was really, really good at what I was good at. And so for me, it was awesome, right? Because I got to go do what I wanted to do, and it fit my skill set really, really well. And so obviously not there anymore. Wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I got some valuable freaking lessons out of it. And at the end of the day, I learned that I need to more so trust myself and bet on myself, whether it was becoming a franchisee or becoming a partner of everything and merging in my franchise business. I get scared at times thinking that I don't have all of the answers, but I think sometimes other people have the answers, or they have the resources. And sometimes other people are really good at making it seem like they do have those answers and that you might not be able to do these things on your own. There's truth to both sides of those things, but sometimes you just have to roll with the punches, and you have to go through the wall instead of trying to like jump around it or fly over it or climb under it. And so I leveled up so much in these last 3 years as a business owner that has already helped me in Builders of Authority, and really will continue to help me for whatever I do in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on the marketing side, like a lot of agencies, myself included, like you do hit that wall where you're like, shit, man, I cannot break through this like recurring revenue ceiling that I've hit. And so it's almost always because of the processes that are behind it that help you hit that next level. So that's great. I'm curious to know, obviously you've gone on and you've went the route of kind of building your own thing from the ground up. You have the experience now. For other marketers who may be coming in, obviously I'm with you. I 100% recommend, like, if you're going to own a marketing agency and start building an agency, learn how to do the work yourself first. Put the time in, get the experience, right? Because essentially you're not even an agency. You're just a freelancer who's offloading work, which I mean, there's a place for that in every market. But, I was actually reading a book because when I started hitting my snag, dude, I was getting so desperate, and not necessarily desperate, but like just stuck. I couldn't find the answers to what I was looking for to take me to that next level and help us get through it. And I realized it was like our customer service experience was horrendous. And so I picked up this book. You may have read it or heard of it, The Client Retention Handbook by Josh Nelson.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
dude, that's a great book. I mean,
Mhm.
I would recommend anyone who's kind of getting into opening a marketing company or becoming a freelancer or whatever, definitely recommend reading that book. Um, so you've transitioned from Height into Builders of Authority. Um, how would you say that transition's been for you? Because a lot of people struggle with kind of, when they have something established, they're doing really well, and then for you to make that transition and kind of just really like, all right, I don't need that back end support of a franchise, which is essentially what it is, right? I mean, it's just someone else's process that they've built out that guides you along the way. You've got your own processes and system built out. How has that transition been for you? And like, what do you think has been kind of the some of the good parts about that transitioning out onto your own, and some of the harder parts of it?
It's a great question. So, Builders of Authority kind of started in its infancy back in November, December of 2023. So, I started speaking on stage in March of 2022, and I was working and speaking to hundreds of different marketing agencies at various different events, and I gave my blueprint on how I grew the agency from 0 to 7 figures in 15 months. I shared my habits, my routines, the strategies, kind of how everything came into play. And after every single time I gave that talk, light bulbs were just going off for agency owners and really just any business in general. Obviously, you're in our Builders of Authority group, and there's every type of entrepreneur that's in there, but it really hits home for the agency owners because they can just attach themselves to where I was at in my agency based on that blueprint. And they were like, Adam, this is the greatest thing. And to me, it was nothing. To me, it was just like, this is my life. This is how I do my content. This is like brushing my teeth. And for 2 years almost, people were like, Adam, do you have a course? Do you have a mastermind? Do you have one-to-one coaching? And I'm like, no, I've done shiny object syndrome before. I'm staying the lane, the marketing agency, and this is only what I'm focused on. And then my son Murphy was born in September of last year, and I had became a partner at all of Height on the fulfillment center back in June. And so I went from franchise owner to partner in a much larger company, as well as like a VP on the C-suite level of everything. And I just didn't like anticipate things happening that ended up happening. And I didn't like the direction it was going. And I knew that I probably need to build something else to be able to eventually walk away from what I was doing at Height. Like that was kind of always the plan, but it just kind of like really escalated things after Murphy was born. So I launched Builders of Authority, which is basically a program or a foundation or a methodology about how you can become the authority in your industry to your ideal clients. So that way people know and think of you as the guy or the gal for insurance agency marketing or personal branding or tree services in St. Louis. That's kind of the methodology with it. So we have a group program, group coaching twice a week. We have one-to-one, and then we have courses, and then we have our live event as well that we do. And in that whole process, obviously I do some consulting now on the different types of digital services that we used to offer and things like that. We do some fulfillment, but not to the level, of course, that we were doing before. But I realized I wanted to build a business around my lifestyle, not my lifestyle around my business. And so started to have some conversations early in 2024, earlier this year. And I was just like, hey, in February, like, I'm basically an employee at this point. This is not what I signed up for. This is not why we did the merger. I want to go do my own thing with Builders of Authority. And so it kind of came, I guess you could say, like out of necessity to a certain degree. I thought it was going to be a much longer transition in full transparency. And then it kind of was just like, no, hey, see ya. And so I kind of fumbled around, if you will, in March, really started to grow Builders of Authority. I think you joined in April. We doubled in April and have really just continued to pick up steam. But I think some of the most exciting things I think about where I'm at right now and why I made that change is I, for years, whether it was whether it was being the franchisee or it was being the partner. So for 3 straight years, essentially, I was thinking I couldn't do these things on my own. And whether it was like, hey, I suck at finances or I'm really bad at process and system, I was telling myself these stories. right? As we all do. And I told myself those stories so often that they almost became, well, they did become reality, right? And so when I now have been forced to do it on my own, it's my executive assistant, Lorna, and I essentially building everything. I realized that yes, you can go much faster and be bigger in a different system, in a bigger company and all those things. But there's so much fun in building something that you're excited to go do every single day. I'm not making as much money as I was. We're not growing as quickly as we ever have before, but it's profitable. It's with amazing people like yourself. And we're curating an environment where people are just growing. And it's not just that they're growing because they're doing more content and personal branding. They're growing because we do work on things like mindset, on general business stuff, on purpose and why and burn and all those things. And so for me, it's much more purposeful and impactful than anything I was doing previously and working with hundreds of employees and hundreds of clients.
And what you're building is special, man. It's a great group. It really is. I mean, like, I'm not on every call just because a lot of those times that's when I'm picking up my son from school.
Yeah.
But I mean, the calls that I get on, there's so much value being on there. And actually, you know what? One of the things I'm going to do, I like to do this on episodes. Whoever's gotten to this point of the podcast, listening to it, the first person who reaches out to me, I will pay for your first 3 months in Builders of Authority to join the group. That's what I'll do for this episode.
Wow.
I like to do those things. I did that with Drew B on our episode. We've had like 2 or 3 people take his course because of it, who have got it for free. So I like to do that because the group is awesome, man. It's a great group, and I'm the growth of the group. I mean, I think my first call we had a good amount of people on there, and then like this past call this month was just like 3 times as many people. I'm like, where did I miss this many calls? I don't think I have.
No, we added a lot of people in a very, very short period of time. And so that was the coolest part. And first off, thank you for making that offer. Whoever takes him up on that, I can guarantee you are going to see some massive exponential growth, not just in your business, but with your personal brand and in other areas of your life. But it's all about momentum, right? And so like we got a bunch of momentum going in April. We have our event coming up next week, and then May continued, and we've already started to add more people. We added 2 more people earlier today, actually, right before this. And when you do good work and you surround yourself with good people and you're doing good work with good people for good clients in a good environment, that's where all of this stuff grows. And it's not always, one of my big concerns with, launching a mastermind was I don't want something massively big. Like there's a ton of masterminds that are out there that are great. Some that I'm still a part of, some that obviously you're a part of as well, that's where they're at. And that's awesome for them. But if I've learned one thing about business, about making money, is that like bigger isn't better at all. Better is better. And I now for the last 6 months, like, of course, things have been like difficult and challenging for me in 2024. Like January 1, I did not have 97% of the stuff that I've gone through or had to go through already this year on my bingo card, but it showed up on my bingo card. And I've had to check all of those boxes. But throughout all the stress, throughout all the anxiety, throughout all those things, what we built with Builders of Authority allows me to go to sleep at night with my head on the pillow and just knowing the massive impact that we're making, knowing how many people are in that group taking action and the ripple effect of what they're doing and how it's implemented throughout everything. It's just, it's freaking fascinating. And for that, I am just super, super, super glad.
And I mean, there's a reason for it, man. You're putting out like really valuable content. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss, especially people who put out courses, they put out groups and masterminds and all that. There's no value behind it most of the time. You know what I mean? The content that's being put out, they still gatekeep a lot of really good information, things that have made them successful, or they half-ass the effort into what they're putting out. And so it shows. And, when you're able to build something like this is it's a testament to the quality of the content that you're putting out and the value you're giving to people. And so I do have a question that's kind of going to take this a little bit of a different direction, just because I'm curious. You've just hired your brother, and he's now working at Builders of Authority. I've got an older sister who I would love to have work with me. She refuses to do it. I have a younger brother. How has it been having your brother get to work with you, having your sibling work with you?
So it's actually funny, and this might bring a better conversation, but he actually quit yesterday.
Oh my God. Oh,
So,
man.
but it's funny.
This.
It's funny. This will actually lead to a really good conversation. So it's actually funny. So he dropped out of college about a year and a half ago, and just decided like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't even know what he was going to school for, really. But long story short, he ended up working at Bass Pro, didn't like that, got into insurance. He was doing working at State Farm, basically just calling people all day long. And then he decided he wanted to move back to St. Louis. And he's like, hey, man, like, I see what you're building. I see what you're doing. Like, I want to be a part of it. And so, I've always been, I've gotten some valuable lessons from mentors and things like that, from, be careful about partnerships, do your due diligence, don't hire family. And, all of the advice that I've gotten, I've ended up taking it, but sometimes I make the wrong decision first and end up having to live through it in order to see the lesson on the other side. But I kind of told him, I said like, hey, like, here's going to be the opportunity. Here's exactly like, I don't exactly know how it's going to go, but here's kind of how we can get this started. And he got in, and it was about 2.5 weeks. And it was funny. On that call on Wednesday, I went over the burn. And so what I was unraveling for people was like, hey, you can have a why and you can have a purpose, but Ben Newman talks about a burn, and your burn needs to be for you. And your burn needs to be something that, regardless of what you do for work, it needs to lead into whatever project, whatever thing you're doing for the infinite project of life. And he was like, after you went through that, he goes, I realized this is not what I want to do. And so I was like, okay, so after, I'm sitting there giving that lesson to pull more out of the members and things like that. And it led to him yesterday saying, hey, man, he started to do content and stuff with me. So he came to Nashville last weekend. I spoke at an event. He shot a bunch of content, did awesome with it. And he said, the reason why I was mainly going to have him in a sales role, because that's kind of what he wanted to do and how he wanted to make money. And that was really the only upside that we had. I don't need a full-time content person or videographer. And he goes, but I realized how passionate I am about what you're doing, but the back end of it with videography and content and things like that. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go do my own thing, and I'm going to be a videographer.
Good for him, man. Good for him. I mean,
exactly.
that's so interesting. That was a really good call too on the burn. And obviously you did a good job, because it got your brother to realize that his burn wasn't where he was. But that's, good for him, man. I'm still a little shocked that happened, but that's awesome, man. He's I wish him the best of luck on his endeavors. And there's a lot of really good people out in St. Louis who are on the videography side and pushing out content like that. I know Joey Yak is out in St. Louis, and he does a lot of that too. So cool. So, all right. So now that we've got that story out the way, which is a shock to me because it obviously just happened yesterday. For someone who's like in the 18 to 21-year-old range, right? Coming out of high school, coming out of college, your brother had dropped out of college, so he's right in that age range. I want to know, what are 3 core foundational recommendations that you would have for someone looking to build their authority?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is you have to get your mindset right. So when and that was one thing that I was working on with him. I said, you're 21 years old. You're going to be talking to, networking with selling to business owners that have been doing this for a very long period of time. And if they aren't in our program or aren't buying our services or whatever, it's likely because they either don't know about us, don't believe in what we're doing, or it could be obviously a financial, whatever I said. But you coming in at 21 with very little experience, with very little like understanding of what the end looks like, or not the end, but like the progression looks like with a lot of this stuff, you have to get your mind to the point of being, I would say, mindset and confidence of like, I know what I'm talking about and I can do it without the years of experience. And so it's not that you're going to be cocky or have an ego like, oh my gosh, I'm 21 and I've done everything that I needed to do to be able to help this person. But he was helping bring people into our facilitation of the program, right? So to the 18 and 21-year-old person, you need to have the mindset that you're not necessarily further along in life, but that you're willing to overcome the obstacles and the challenges and the rebuttals people are going to give you because you're 18 or 21. If you're trying to go and do things differently than the typical 18 to 21-year-old. The second thing, in order to build your authority, the best way to do this stuff is work for very little money or free. And so the reason why I say that is one of the reasons why, and people get this wrong all the time, one of the reasons why I grew from 0 to 7 figures in 15 months back in 2020 was not because I had done so many things differently from a branding or a marketing standpoint, or my services were that different, but I had 200 websites that I had built that I made $9,000 on collectively. And those were sites that I owned with results. So I'm talking to a business owner and they're in X industry. They're like, hey, do you have examples? I'm like, yeah. If you're a roofing company, you want residential roofing, you want commercial roofing, you want Texas, you want St. Louis. Same thing with a bunch of different other industries. And that built my authority because of the work that I had already put in. Even though it wasn't making me a ton of money, it had built up my authority and reputation that, hey, he at least knows what he's talking about. Because there's agencies that are still out there that are charging way more than I've ever charged, been in business way longer, have way more clients, way more team members, the nicest offices and things like that. You ask to get under the hood of some of their stuff, their case studies, their own marketing, they can't do it. And so I think just if I was 18 and 21 again, I'd be building that case study foundation, getting a bunch of client work, referrals, reviews. I mean, those are some of the best testimonials. Those are some of the best things that you could get. And then I would say number 3 is just get in the room, right? So like the best thing I ever did back in 2020 is I joined my first mastermind in August. I was 1 month into entrepreneurship full time before I joined a mastermind. Now there's people that have joined masterminds when they're doing side hustles. There's people that have waited 10 years to join a mastermind, and then everything in between and beyond that. But one of the things that I'm super grateful for is at a very, very early moment in my entrepreneurial career, I realized that I didn't have all of the answers, even though in July, I kind of thought I did. I thought, oh my gosh, this is freaking incredible. I just left. We just moved into this house with a pool. I can work whenever I want to. This is awesome. And then I got hit with reality very quickly. But I looked at where I was at, the revenue we were bringing in, and I said, if I can condense the amount of time it's going to take me to get from this where I'm at right now, which is essentially 0, to that next base camp of $10,000 and then 20 and then whatever, I would rather pay for it now and get there quicker by being in the right room with the right people. And so I didn't pay myself for the first 9 months either. And a lot of people think that's crazy. And they're like, well, then you must have not been doing any revenue. No, I could have paid myself. I could have paid myself fine, but I was stacking up cash in the business to go reinvest it in partnerships and masterminds and hire coaches and events and things like that. And I left a $200,000 a year job. I just bought a really, really nice house, and we have all these other bills and things like that. Like I I needed the money, but I didn't need it as much as the information, the education, the networking, the building of the relationships, and that whole formula, right? That I share right there. That's what got me to where I was at in 15 months. And that's what's got me to where I am at today. And I think so many people get that thing wrong where they're like, okay, I'm starting to make money. I got to take stuff out and I got to pay. And there's, going back, what I had paid myself first before reinvesting, probably something, right, to just get the rhythm started from a financial standpoint. But that right there is like the story and the blueprint of who I am. And everybody talks about, well, it's regurgitated content and all these different everything. Even the programs of the people that are like saying stuff is X, Y, and Z. Everybody got stuff from someone. Alex Hormozy says it best. He's like, man, if all the people that were, years ago that were the leaders, if they had content, like you would see the correlation, right? But it's just now more prevalent than ever of like regurgitated content and things like that, because everybody's saying a lot of the same stuff, but your story and how you connect everything is really what the difference is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's like, dude, it's the year 2024. Like, how many people have actual content or like ideas that aren't like, haven't already been talked about and already been done? You know what I mean? Like, and at the end of the day, like you look at like someone like Gary Vee, right? Who just like, he is the king of regurgitated content, but like, that's how everyone knows him, because they just keep hearing that same message over and over and over and over. And I think that ties back to like how he built his authority, is because when you think of him, I mean, the second you say Gary Vee's name, you could probably think of like 3 things that he says all the time. Like, and you're like, dude, I'm tired of it. And it's like the same thing that led to his ascension is why he's kind of like seeing a little bit of a downfall right now. Yeah. But I'm a huge Gary Vee fan personally, but like everything with him is like, this is the single number one most important thing in my life that I'm the most passionate about. Like he says that about everything. It's like everything is number one to you, but one of the things you said on mindset was like, come in and you want to learn everything, right? Like you have to have that mindset coming into a job of like, you're young, like you don't know everything. People are going to challenge you on it. And I think that's a great piece of advice. And what I would add to that is like, give yourself the experience and the confidence by learning everything about the product you're selling. Because I think that's where a lot of people go wrong too, is they come into a job without the experience and they don't learn anything about what they're selling and pitching and things like that, right? Like on the insurance side, we bring in salespeople all the time who come in and like they're trying to pitch products and they're smiling and dialing. They're doing hundreds of outbound dials per day, and they get a year in and they still don't know everything about the product that they're selling. And it's like, you could have sped up your ascension into success way quicker and had way more experience and confidence in your conversations if you just learned about your product first. Yeah. If you learned everything about your product and your service, so that was a great piece of information. And then the other is like, when you were talking about like gaining the experience, how you've done it yourself with the 200 websites and kind of like just learning and gaining that experience on your own dime. Dude, that's such a huge piece. If you're young, if you're 18 to 21 and you're trying to get into a company or a business where you haven't necessarily had any experience, you don't know anyone there, going in cheap or free is the best thing you could possibly do, because it's almost a guarantee you're going to get in if you're willing to go to do it for free and gain the experience. And not only that, but the biggest portion is that you're now gaining the network of the people in there. As long as you do good work, you work hard, you show up, but now you have access to the people who are in charge and you're learning everything from the people you want to learn from. So like for me personally, I started working at State Farm 10 years ago. After like 6 months, I worked there a year, After a year working at State Farm, I had an opportunity to go work for the largest Allstate agency in the country, $86 million Allstate agency. I'm like, there was no openings for me. They were like, you have the sales experience to come work here, but we don't have a seat for you. But if you want to set appointments for like our financial advisor, it's like the lowest base salary. I was like, sign me up. I don't care. Bring me in. I want to learn everything I can from the most successful person in this industry. This guy he's 30 minutes from my house, and he owns the largest insurance agency in the country, like the largest captive agency. Dude, why wouldn't I want to go work for this guy? He's going to pay me at some point anyways, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like how my insurance career kind of launched off, because I went in as an appointment setter, even though I had the sales experience and was probably better than 75% of the people on that sales team. But I went in very humbly, knowing that I was going to learn everything from the ground up. And I also knew that I wanted to open my own agency at some point. So who better to learn from than someone who's built something I want? You know, so I learned how to set the appointments, which is why I teach on it now. I've learned how to grow teams. I learned how to manage offices. I learned how to sell insurance. And I took everything with that intention behind it. So I love that, man, because, and another example, sorry to keep going on this, but like when I owned my agency, one of the first people I hired was this guy, Tyler Nagel. This kid's like 18, 19 years old. He dropped out of college also. And he's like, dude, my uncle has so much money and he owns an insurance agency, and that's what I've always wanted to do, but he doesn't want to hire me, which is like, he probably took that advice you didn't take of like, don't hire siblings. But, so he happened to be going to college like right up the road from me. He found the agency, stopped into the office. I was like, dude, I'll give you a shot, man. If you're willing to work for cheap, you know. I put him through some tests to see if he would like, you know, fold or not. Like in his interview, I had him outbound dialing and setting appointments. And he passed with flying colors, man. And now here we are 4 years later, and he's selling over $2 million a year in insurance and owns his own agency. So, you know, and that's because he had that right mindset of like, dude, I want to learn. I'm willing to come in. You don't have to pay me a salary. Like I just want to come in and learn how to do this. I want to learn the right way to do it. And then I'm going to put in the work. So thank you for sharing that. I've got 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up here. What are some lessons that you would want to share, not with your past self for now, but with your future self, so that you won't ever forget it as you ascend and keep growing? Because I think a lot of times as we grow, sometimes we lose track of some of the things that made us successful, some of those foundational things. So talking now, Adam McChesney, to your future self, what are some things that you would want to make sure you don't forget?
Man, these are some good questions. You're a good podcast host. I've always been asked about like, what would you tell your past self, not my future self? But I think it ties in a lot with the burn that I have right now. And so I shared that on our call Wednesday, but my burn right now is to bet on myself. So that way I don't have to rely on anyone else to design the life that I want for myself and family. And if I look at, you know, when I was in corporate America, one of the reasons why I wanted to leave is because we kept getting, you know, hit with different commission, you know, hey, it's unlimited commission. And then all of a sudden, when you start selling a bunch of it, they always, you know, slap your hand and then they bring it back down. All of those different things. I was like, you know what? I don't want to bet. And even if there was uncapped commission, but I was still working for someone else, you're still relying on someone else to a certain degree. And it's not all in your hands. You could get fired at a moment's notice or let go or whatever. So betting on myself was why I left then originally. And then when I went back out on my own recently and all in on Builders of Authority, that was me betting on myself again. And so I want my future self to know is if like, it's not, I'm not going to say I'm not going to have partners or do anything like that in the future. We're going to grow a portfolio of equity shared businesses more than we already have. But like my main thing, Builders of Authority, I don't need other people. Right. And so I just want to remind myself if people try to come, because that's been my track record is I start building something and I build it and people see opportunities to come get a piece of it. And I start to think of like, how big could we make it? And how big all those different opportunities could be. And so betting on myself, and then just remember like what I said earlier already, but like bigger isn't better. Better is better. And that's a huge thing that I've really tried to like rethink about now. And a lot as I'm kind of going through this new cycle of stuff. So those would be the 2 things.
Awesome, man. All right, last question, and then we're going to wrap up here. On the backside of that, you've built multiple successful businesses. You're building another great one right now. In order to have sustained success, what is one major thing that you would recommend everyone to avoid in building their business in order to have sustained success in building their businesses?
That's a great question. What to avoid? I think the biggest thing would be is surrounding yourself with the wrong people. So whether that's wrong team members, wrong clients, wrong mentors, wrong people that influence your business in some sort of way. I look at all of those things, and I had representations of all of that in my agency. And so, not that you're going to get it right all of the time, but I think if you can avoid those things, and especially avoid all, like if you have one of those things at one time, you're okay. But like if you have all four of those things struggling at some point, like you're going to have a lot of struggle and pain and issues and things like that. So just surrounding yourself with the right people is key, and making sure that you avoid the wrong people is even more important.
Those are great words right there. Adam, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for hopping on this episode today. I hope sometime in the future we can have you on another episode. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
Thanks again, man. I appreciate you.
This is awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Wait, where can people reach you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So Facebook is probably going to be the easiest place. You just type in Adam McChesney. You'll see me with a red shirt on and an AM logo. Send me a friend request, follow, join our free Facebook group. So we also have a free Facebook group called Builders of Authority. Go join that. And if you want some more information about Builders of Authority, go to buildauthority.co, and you'll see all the different things we have to offer.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. And I hope you have a great day. Once again, thanks for hopping on here. We'll have this episode live on Spotify and Apple. And I'm still holding up that. So anyone who listens to this episode, first 3 months of Builders of Authority is on me. So go be the first one to snag that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mindset Mentor with Victor Gonzalez. We hope today's episode has fueled your passion for business and personal growth. Remember, the journey of entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep cultivating that winning mindset, seek out mentorship, and join us next time for more insights on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to stay updated. Until then, keep striving for excellence and make every day count.